Well, welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. And on this episode, we are speaking with John Klare, who's the Executive Vice President in FASCOR. Supply chain companies are really having to be more flexible and adaptable with things changing in the supply chain, e-commerce, omnichannels, and just overall complex inventory needs. And John speaks about this from his experience in working in the supply chain for many years. So please join me in welcoming John. So welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. And on this episode, we have John Klare II from FASCOR. He's the Executive Vice President for FASCOR Software Division. So welcome, John.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, as you said, I'm John Klare II. I'm Executive Vice President of Software Solutions. I've been with the company since 1986. The company's been in existence for 40 years, and we are a provider of supply chain solutions for companies in the mid to upper market, and excited about what the future holds and talking here this morning with you. Our whole focus is on supply chain management. So our core two primary products are our warehouse management solution and our transportation management solution. We are part of a larger organization now called Hi-Tech, which is essentially a one-stop shop now for supply chain technology and solutions. So whether a company is looking for supply chain consulting, conveyors, integrated solutions, advanced automation like robotics, ASRS systems, and now FASCOR is the division for software solutions. Under Hi-Tech, we can now offer a lot to our customers. Pretty much anything they want to do within the four walls of their warehouse, we're probably involved with now. We think we can bring a lot to the table in terms of a value proposition for our clients.
Are you pretty much ERP agnostic, or do you have a specific ERPs that you have success with?
Yeah, as a general, we are ERP agnostic. So we have clients across the board, from the Dynamics family of products to Sage, Acumatica, SAP, Oracle. And one of the things that we do there is our backend API set is pretty universal for every one of those. What does change, obviously, is the protocol, the handshaking, when you start getting down into the specific clients, depending on if they've done any modifications or customizations. Sometimes the mapping of the data can change. But our system is pretty versatile in terms of its ability to communicate in this day and age to systems. We actually got a few clients out there that have multiple ERPs where there's been a number of mergers and acquisitions. Right. Systems get inherited. So you have to be able to be nimble and respond to that. We give our customers a lot of options, even in terms of the technology platforms. We have some that are very simple, where they just want to pass files back and forth. And then we have our more current customers that are using our JSON API sets. So we can play in a lot of different environments with a lot of different ERP systems, and we really try to be the chameleon when it comes to that part of the puzzle. I will say this, historically though, about 45% of our business has come out of the Dynamics world, going back to 1999 when we introduced our product into the GP space. We're now moving over into the Business Central space. We've done some things in the F&O. So as we look at the future, there's no question that the Dynamics world and the channel is going to continue to be a big part of FASCOR Hi-Tech.
And you mentioned Business Central, so that's kind of new, right? You're compatible now with Business Central?
Yeah, we have our first couple projects going in as we speak right now. Good customers. One was a former GP account that rolled over into Business Central. Another one was coming off of a totally different platform. So we've been able to work with a couple of the partners out there. We believe we've built out a really good solution set that can be dropped in and address the vast majority of the requirements. And there's no question, Business Central is getting a lot of our attention and resources right now, and it will continue to for the foreseeable future.
Great. What challenges have you seen in the channel over the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic? Like, what impact has that had on partners and customers and how you work with them?
You know, it's like anything else. There's been some pros and cons to it. The pro was that we certainly understood better now than we ever did that we can do a lot of stuff virtually and do it very well. It's actually kind of helped us in some respects from a recruiting perspective, because our team doesn't necessarily have to be as centralized as maybe we thought it did pre-pandemic. That said, when you don't have the direct interaction with customers that we used to have, the face-to-face, building those relationships can be a real challenge. And I think that's actually where the channel is a real advantage for us potentially. And that is the channel partners have those relationships with customers. They've been working with them in a lot of cases well before the pandemic. So the ability to parlay those relationships into our own relationship really helps us, I think, in terms of the sales process with customers.
Right.
And then the ongoing relationship with customers too, because if we can work with partners well, they can really be our voice for the customer, our advocate, if you will, within those accounts. And that's pretty big. And that's something that we've been blessed to benefit from in the past.
Kind of go back, tell the story. How did the company get started?
Actually, my dad started it 40 years ago, back in 1982. He saw an opportunity to get into some automation that he thought had a good future ahead of it. If you look at our 40 years, like a lot of companies, you'll see a certain ebb and flow where things change, markets change, and at those inflection points, the company's changed. So we started off doing warehouse control software for a local conveyor manufacturer here in Cincinnati. That evolved in the late 90s into the transportation module, where we were doing a lot of work with UPS and FedEx at the time. As we got into the mid 90s, some of our customers had a bigger need to address their inventory control systems, which they didn't really have automation for at the time. And a lot of the work that we had done in the previous 10, 15 years kind of catered towards us being in a good position to meet those needs for them. 1994 was when we implemented our first WMS. That has been our flagship product ever since. The TMS is an integrated piece of our solution set now. But what we do today certainly far exceeds anything we did back in the early days. And then last year, we had a number of companies approach us interested in potentially bringing us into their families. When it all shook out, we felt that high-tech was actually a really good fit for us. Industry-wise, it was a good fit. Product-wise, it was a great fit. And probably most importantly, kind of going back to our comment about the relationships, we felt that culturally, they were the kind of people we wanted to hook our boat to, if you will, and be part of the game. So in March of this year, we officially became a division of high-tech material handling systems. It's a Midwest company. Collectively, we're about a $400 or $500 million organization now with 5 different divisions. And like I said earlier, we can collectively as a whole, we could go in and be very laser focused on a specific area, or we can be very general and look at the entire suite of solutions that a customer may need. We actually got a couple of our long-standing customers that we were working with well before this merger. And shortly after we announced it, opportunities presented themselves. We're working on some automation with both of them. So I think it's going to be a great fit. We get to stay kind of as FASCOR. We are the software brain of high-tech now. I think it's going to afford us some really, really good opportunities to impact our clients, grow our business, improve our team. We've already added a number of people since the acquisition. I would say excited is the word we use the most around here, because we are. We think it's a great opportunity. It was the right time, right company. And the market right now is incredibly hot too for supply chain. It's not going to cool off either. It's where companies need to invest to stay competitive. So we think we got a great opportunity, and even a bigger one now that we're part of high-tech. Now, when we can bring these additional resources and technologies and tools into the suite, we can do some pretty cool things. We had one customer back in 2019, their average cost of distribution per order was around $10.60. After putting our solution in, it dropped to $6.75.
Right.
And now we're looking to put in some additional automation, some robotics and ASR systems, where we think we can drive that number down into about a $4.50 range. So incrementally, just keep knocking it off, becoming more and more efficient. The high-tech gives us a lot more resources. And the other real plus for us, we believe, in terms of the high-tech engagement, it's going to allow us to expand our product offering quite a bit. The WMS is going to grow pretty rapidly here. We're going to be able to tackle more pieces to the puzzle, make it a better product as we go forward. So I think it could be a win-win-win on all fronts.
So you talked about transportation management, or TMS. Talk about that, because it seems like, especially with the supply chain, challenges and transportation decisions, it must be really challenging.
It's a good question, and certainly a very germane one in our industry, because I'll start by saying if you ask 10 people to define what TMS is, you'll probably get 10 slightly different answers. For us, TMS really deals with small parcel and LTL shipments primarily. We do some full truckloads, but the real bread and butter part is that small parcel and that mid-tier shipment of LTL. Our product gives companies the ability to rate shop across all those to make decisions about carriers, looking at cost, but also delivery commitments so that they can meet their service level agreements. It's fully integrated with our WMS so that when we go to make decisions about how we allocate, who's going to be assigned work, how we're going to split orders into different picking methodologies, being able to know how we're going to ship it and what our parameters are, become really important decision makers in that process, in that kind of the procedural part of the warehouse. So having the TMS under our roof, where we don't have to depend on any third party, is actually a pretty big differentiator for us. And to answer or to go back to your question before about what's changed with the pandemic, obviously a lot of companies pre-pandemic were in that very traditional B2B model. They had existing customers, they had regular routine orders. Usually those orders were pretty good size where they were refilling periodically at a bulk level. Over the course of the last few years, a huge shift, major shift into more of the e-com B2C type of model, even though they were still working with businesses. The average number of shipments has gone sky high. The size of the orders have gotten smaller, which has put more and more pressure on companies to make decisions not only about can they fill the order, but how are they going to ship the order? And that's where TMS comes in. So one of the areas that we know we're in a great position to help companies is in the e-com world, where they're dealing with those small parcel carriers, those LTL guys, because we can bring the complete solution to them. You add in there some other capability that our system has, like what we call cartonization, and that's the system's ability to look at an order and make a decision whether it's best to send it as one big box, 3 smaller boxes, or any other combination, to know how stuff goes into a box to maximize the density. That piece, coupled with TMS, coupled with the core WMS capability, is one of the many areas where we can eliminate touches, eliminate cost, and really make them a lot more efficient.
Right? I think about the orders I get from ordering online. You get a big box and a whole bunch of bubble wrap. No, thank you. Really? This is how you
I'll be honest, the company that amazes me the most is Amazon. I mean, we all get stuff from Amazon, and I get boxes here all the time that are this big, and it's a little tiny item.
Little tiny item and a lot of bubble wrap. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are real world challenges that every company has, whether they're Amazon or whether they're a mom and pop company trying to sell their stuff through Amazon, through a storefront. And what we believe is that we can enable that kind of technology for any company, from a small one to a mid-size to a large one. And if they do that, if they use that technology right, they can really make some big differences in terms of their operational efficiencies, their bottom line, and it can position them for growth so that as their businesses scale, they don't necessarily have a one-to-one relationship now labor-wise to be able to go to those next levels. So we're doing some foundational things with companies, we're doing some transformational things with companies, and then we're doing some long-term stuff with them with all the other automation that we can roll into these conversations.
Yeah, you talked about e-commerce and omnichannel too. I want to get into that a little bit more because that can mean a lot of things. But like I know there's a story I heard from you tell about Gorilla Glue. They went from basically having to ship to those small parcel carriers. Tell the story about Gorilla Glue.
Totally. I think we started doing business with them around 2015, and when we first went in there, they were pretty much really dominated by the big box shipments, going to the Walmarts, the Home Depots, and that's where they saw their most growth. Today, that still represents a big part of their world, no question about it. But when you look at the other two parts, the mid-size shipments, where they're sending out maybe a pallet of product or a few pallets, but then you add on top of that the direct-to-consumer fulfillment, which a lot of that's actually coming through an Amazon storefront, where they're doing the fulfillment for the orders that are coming off of Amazon. The dynamics of all those different order profiles has really changed their world. No question about it. So when you walk into their operation, you'll see three very discrete areas, each doing it a little differently than the others, different pick methodologies, different labor requirements, different labeling expectations that you have for a retailer versus a consumer, even the way you package it. Because when you're talking consumer stuff now, the consumer experience is a very real factor in the way companies are judged nowadays. So you want boxes that, generally speaking, aren't way oversized. Okay, you want customers thinking that you're on top of your game, that you're effective, you're efficient, and you're well run. So our system gives a company like Gorilla the ability to play in all three of those spaces. So companies that are omni-channel, they need that kind of functionality.
Yeah, I think the story that you told me about the pivot they had to make during the pandemic, they weren't getting the big box shipments that they used to. So now they're shipping, direct to consumer. So, they were able to make that pivot using FASCOR software and really not adding any more headcount. Like you could throw bodies at it, right? Add more warehouse workers, everybody work faster, harder. But it sounds like with FASCOR, they could just do that process a lot more efficiently and not have to add that headcount.
And that shift that you're talking about there, Carol, that wasn't unique to them. That happened to thousands of companies. And because they didn't have systems that were flexible and adaptable and configurable, some of them really struggled to deal with that. And some of them probably lost business because let's face it, in this day and age, the customer loyalty isn't what it used to be 30, 40 years ago. If people can save money or if they can find it faster, they'll make that switch. So it's incumbent on companies to be in a position to service their customers regardless of how they want it. We have another client that's the largest distributor in North America for steel outdoor power equipment, STIHL. They have all the orange product. They sell through a distribution network. When we started doing business with them in the late 90s, actually in the late 80s, they started with our TMS system. In 97, they put in our WMS system. Since 97, they've gone through 2 ERP changes.
Wow.
2 warehouse expansions, and a completely new warehouse move about a year and a half ago. They've gone from I think I got my numbers right here, roughly a $50, $75 million company when we started working with them to around 300 million now. And this is the stat that I love to throw out. When they were at 50 or 75 million, they had roughly 12 full-time employees and a part-time staff of 5 or 6. Today, 5 or 6-fold larger. They have less than 20 full-time people in the warehouse and a part-time team of 5 or 6 as well. So if you charted those, it's not a linear progression in terms of their cost for distribution to their growth overall. It's actually been a big separation, and relatively speaking, their incremental labor cost and their needs for labor have not grown anywhere near what they were back in the late 90s. And can we take credit for all that? No, they've done a lot of things really well out there in terms of how they run their place, the way they configure their physical warehouse, the way they manage their products. But a lot of it we can't take credit for because we give them the tools to take decisions out of the people's hands, automate it, make it more efficient, eliminate touches. And if you talk to them, we really are the one of the cornerstones for their business.
Oh, that's an impressive story about that. And I based on your experience, what other perspective are you seeing with people trying to improve their operational efficiency in their warehouse and their business and supply chain? What are you seeing and what do you have to share about that?
One is the cost of automation, the high-end automation, the robots and the ASRS stuff continues to come down and become more and more accessible to smaller companies. So what used to be reserved for Amazon and the big guys, now companies that are 25 to 100 million can get in that game and see the kind of ROI that they need to justify those expenses. The costs have come down, the results are still very high. I think that's number one. I already touched on number two, and that's the whole labor piece. It's driving everything. Third, we live in a world that's driven by data. And just like every other part of the business, there's a saying that I really like, and it says your roadmap to the future is in your data. And it is. but people often don't have enough of the data, or they can't get to it in a timely fashion, or they don't have the tools wrapped around it to really turn that data into actionable decisions. So in our world, if I went back 5-10 years ago and I was doing a presentation with a client, I'd be talking about general reporting capability. Today, I'm talking about BI. I'm talking about the intelligence built into our product to help them make better decisions, about the dashboards that we can bring to them so that when you walk into a Grill Glue, everybody from their customer service team to their sales team to the warehouse departments all have access to different dashboards coming out of our system to give them real-time inventory information, whether they're talking raw materials, packaging material, or finished goods. The last one is probably, at least in the supply chain, the rate of change in the rate of introduction of the new technologies is incredibly fast. It's really hard for people and companies to stay current with it because it changes literally week to week, month to month, year to year. I think it's incumbent for vendors to continue to provide solutions that are very adaptable. Systems are going to have to change. They're going to have to work with other products, whether it's different ERP modules, whether it's different hard technology, whether it's a BI platform like Microsoft BI. We have our own BI tools, but what we're doing is constantly trying to build all of our BI tools so that if we have customers that are using Microsoft's BI product or a third-party product outside of that, that we can share all the information very easily with them to facilitate that. So I think this need to be flexible, adaptable, configurable versus things that are where things put companies behind the 8 ball in terms of not being able to change quickly and easily. I think those that are the former part of that comment I just made are the ones that are going to be the biggest successes out there, because change is inevitable. Yeah. What we've seen happen over the last couple of years with the pandemic, most of that's not going to go away. Companies aren't going to go back to the traditional B2B model, not fully back at least. So companies have to be flexible. They have to be able to omnichannel. They have to be able to do all the things that we're talking about here. When we talk about omni, we're talking about within the 4 walls. It doesn't matter what kind of order we have, we can handle it. If it changes on the fly, we can handle it. Even in terms of the core outbound order fulfillment, a lot of traditional order systems were somewhat confined, if you will, or constrained based on their need to release a group of work, clear it out, then release the next group. Clear it out, release the next, where there was almost this singular, channel that you had to go through. Right. Nowadays, our waves of order are flexing all the time. We may have 10 waves get released, and then all of a sudden we get a drop from the host that says these 3 orders, these 3 have to get out right now. Maybe just a unique customer or a certain type of product. Well, we give the customers the ability to handle that kind of stuff. I always laugh. One of the best sounds for us in our business is silence. When we walk into a customer and we don't hear chaos, we know our system is helping them do exactly what they need to do, because there's a cadence, there's a flow, there's a certain sense of calmness because it's all being orchestrated. It's not putting the fire out.
Right. So, well, just to kind of wrap up, is there kind of one overall trend, John, that you're seeing from, partners in the space that are driving customers to talk to you and to their partner?
There's a lot of different products in the marketplace for supply chain management and warehouse and TMS. And we typically play in the mid to the upper tier. A lot of times you'll hear our product referred to as a tier 1 level functionality. Right. And what that simply means is we can handle the more complex requirements. The general trend that the supply chain is hot, that the supply chain is driving so much of our world, that the supply chain is changing. I think what that dictates and means is that the world of supply chain is only going to get more and more complex for companies, big and small. Right. So companies really need to look at it not only short term but long term, and if they do, I think we become a very real piece of the equation in a lot of cases that can meet their immediate needs, their short-term needs, but also, like I've said a couple of times already, be a foundational piece for them that establishes a really solid footprint for the long term, gives them the flexibility and adaptability that they need, and it helps them, achieve their goals. So
Great. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
I appreciate the time here today. The channel has been a part of our world going back to 1999. Obviously, there's been a lot of ebbs and flows with that channel over the years when Microsoft came in. But I want to reiterate that we see the channel as a very, very valuable part of our future. And it's one that under high tech, we will continue to make an investment, probably a much bigger investment that we've even been able to make in the past. And if there are partners out there that are interested in learning more about our solution, that have customers that they think might even be a remotely possible fit, we love to talk to them. We love to try and work with them. I think we can bring a lot to the table, and good partners can reap some nice rewards out of opportunities that we would share.
If you want to reach out to John, here's his email and phone number. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you further about your needs and requirements, and especially into this very complex world of supply chain. So thank you, John, for joining today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Carol.
All right. Talk to you
All
soon.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.